verses 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 lined up. I'll start with verse number 16. अनेकचित्तविभ्रान्ताः मोहजालसमावृताः प्रसक्ता कामभोगेषु पतन्ति नरके अशुचो. So the verse translates to perplexed by many a fancy, entangled in the snares of delusion, addicted to sensual enjoyments, they fall into murky hell. So let's take this up word by word. Anek chitta vibhranta. So anek is many, chit is the intellect, vibhrant is deluded. So anek chitta vibhranta becomes bewildered or perplexed by many fancy delusions, by many a fancy. Moh jal samavritaha. So moh is what is delusion, jal is a web, samavrita is entangled. So moh jal samavrita becomes that they are entangled in this web of delusion. Prasakta is when you are addicted. Kam bhogeshu, so kam is desires, bhog is enjoyment, so kam bhogeshu becomes in sensual enjoyments. Patanti is they fall. Patita is actually, patit is someone who is fallen. So patanti, they fall. Narke is nark or in to hell. Ashucho. Ashucho, shuchi is purity. Ashucho is impure, foul, dirty, murky. So the verse translates to bewildered by many a fancy, entangled in the snares of delusion, addicted to sensual enjoyments, they fall into murky hell. So let's chant it together. अनेकचेत्तविभ्रान्ताः मोहजालसमावृताः प्रसक्ता कामभोगेषु पतन्ति नरके अशुचो. So, Lord Krishna is summarizing the life cycle of a person with devilish tendencies. It's just like in your bio classes, school curriculum, you would have read how the butterfly comes out of the pupa, which comes from the caterpillar, which comes from the egg, right? So that is the life cycle of the butterfly. Here we are talking about the life cycle of a demonic person. So he's saying that he's perplexed by many a fancy, entangled in snares of delusion, addicted to sensual enjoyments, they fall into murky hell. So this is the illustration. Now, if you read this, you will find that it is so close. It's actually like a painting is being made of that ladder of fall that we did as far back as chapter 2, verses 62 and 63. That was the most important thing in that chapter, which directly related to the way we function. And that talked about how attachment to the world leads to desires. And if these are met, more desires are born. If they are not met, then it gives rise to anger. Anger always leads to delusion of our intellect, loss of memory, and once the intellect is gone, we perish. So this is exactly what this verse is saying, that they perish uh, by many a fancy, the desires and the attachment. Then they become come into the clutches of that snares of delusion. So they think that the more you get, the more happy you will be. So that is the first part of the ladder of fall. Addicted to sensual enjoyments, and of course anger is, if the desire is not met, then anger is also a result of that. But ultimately you're just seeking sensual enjoyments, so they fall into murky hell. So this is an illustration actually of the ladder of fall, which we had done as far back as chapter 2. So now what happens? The person with actually with any tendency has an underlying sense of incompleteness or sorrow or void. And to fulfill that incompleteness or sorrow or void, the person moves out into the world without even evaluating whether this gap, this void is there, is it there, or you just get the impression it's an illusion actually, because it's a fancied void. It is something we think is not there. So I think that my happiness lies in that sari which is hung in the store window. If I get that, I'll be happy. Okay. Or by eating the first mango of the season. All those examples that we have been discussing. But all these uh, attractions which we see outside, because of the gap, we do not think, evaluate them, and we do not realize that the direction is wrong. We should not be moving out. We should be going inside. We are paripoon. We are complete within ourselves. So why should I go out? But the person under delusion or ignorance or wrong understanding moves into the world to fill the gap. And normally the desires that the demonic people have are selfish desires. And even if it's a very insignificant desire that you want to be comfortable and this bird is irritating you or some insect is irritating you, so let me kill the insect. You could have done some other thing for it, but no. So whatever, it's an insignificant desire, you are out to harm the environment. That gives the person a temporary feeling of satisfaction or joy or peace, relief. Now, desiring more joy, the person repeats this action. Okay. This we can clearly understand with respect to, let's say, smoking or drugs or buying, purchasing, the sari example. You think that sari will give you joy. It's giving you joy as long as it's new. One or two wears, you will look out for another one. And you think that that will give you more joy, but actually it will give you lesser joy than the previous sari. So not, that is arising because the person does not understand that the desires are insatiable. You may recollect we had read the nature of the desire in great detail in chapters 3, 4, 3 and 4 actually. So the demonic person unintelligently harbors these desires which are insatiable. They will never get fulfilled and continues to indulge in them. And the more the person indulges, what is happening is that the person is functioning on the likes and dislikes. You may recollect that entire sequence that we had talked, that mind must be under the aegis of the intellect, right? That means the discrimination should tell you whether you should do an activity or not. But the person is now in an indulgent mode. The power is given to the mind. Intellect takes a back seat, and the person continues to indulge. And as the indulgences increase, the delusions also increase. These two are directly related. So the more you indulge, the more deluded or the more ignorant you keep becoming. So because you're thinking that the next one will give me more joy, it's like it's actually like an addict. So you think that one cigarette, which becomes two cigarettes, becomes a pack of cigarette in a day, and so on. It just steadily increases because you are looking for that joy which you got from the first cigarette that you smoked. So the person is entangled in a web of delusion. This surrounds the person. And the only thought is of acquiring means to fulfill what desire has arisen. So if I cannot afford a pack of cigarettes today, but I need it. Now I need to have that. I'm looking for that happiness from that pack of cigarettes. I need to have means to buy that pack of cigarettes, right? The indulgence, therefore, as we have also read, follows the law of diminishing returns. So the joy is continuously decreasing and becoming zero. And after some time, when addiction has actually set in properly, it turns negative, it turns harmful. So this is the stage when the person is addicted to those desires and enjoyments. So when the person is egoistic and says to a staff that, why don't you do this? And why will you not do this? It just goes on from one staff member to the next to the entire workforce at your place. So the life cycle of a person with devilish tendencies is very similar to that of any addict. Chasing lust and greed, the sensual desires, they start on the path of selfish and immoral actions. And all this, which is in violation with our true nature, will always result in mental agitation, suffering, and sorrow. And this is the hell that the verse is talking about, this unclean, murky hell. This is hell. So heaven and hell are actually not physical locations that on the left side of earth at so many miles in the sky is heaven, and on the other side is hell. No, they all mental states of our very own. So they're within us, and they're mental states of pleasure and pain. And the demonic, because of their thought process and their delusion, they go through hell all their lives. So with that, let's move on to verse number 17. आत्मसम्भावितास्तब्धाः धन्मानमदान्विताः यजन्ते नाम यज्ञस्ते dambhena So the verse translates to self-conceited, stubborn, overpowered by pride and arrogance of wealth. They perform sacrifices in name out of ostentation, contrary to the scriptures. Word by word. Atma sambhavita. So when you are full of yourself, self-conceited, stabdha is when you're stubborn, ingrained that this is the right thing. Dhan is wealth, man is pride, mad is that arrogance. Anvinta, vita is overpowered by. Yajante is what you worship or sacrifice for. Nam yagya sacrifices. So Nam is name. Yagya is sacrifice. So Nam yagya becomes sacrifices in name. Te de dambhain out of ostentation, to show, or to advertise. Avidhi purvak, purvakam. So vidhi purvak is as ordained by our scriptures or by the moral values. Avidhi purvakam becomes without or in contradiction to what the moral values or the moral rules are telling us. So the verse reads, self-conceited, stubborn, overpowered by pride and arrogance of wealth, they perform sacrifices in name out of ostentation, contrary to the scriptures. So let's chant it together. Atma sambhavita stabdha dhanmana madanvita yajante nam yagyeste dambhena vidhi purvakam. So we're talking of sacrifices here, yajna. And we had covered yajna in chapter 4, which was actually the Gyan Karma Sannyasa Yoga. And the core of the chapter were the 12 yajnas. So these were verses 25 to 30, and where we had discussed how the entire life cycle of ours can be converted into worship. So basically, when we are working in the world or acting in the world, how we should conduct ourselves in the spirit of service and sacrifice, if you remember, setting up a higher goal and so on and so forth. So virtuous people perform yajnas or sacrifices to purify themselves. So whatever are my vasanas, whatever are my bad qualities, I try to remove by performing the yajna, and to and why do I want to purify myself? Because I want to reach that power, that supreme power, because I know that that power exists, and that is where I should be, and that power is enabling me. So all the sacrifices or all the rites and rituals arise out of devotion and dedication to that supreme power. So the true seeker, we had read then, it sacrifices ego at the altar of God. That is the right attitude with which the sacrifices should be done. So when we are undertaking a yajna, with what attitude are we doing it? So that was the correct attitude that we read about in chapter 4. The interesting part is that the demonic people are also doing sacrifices, but the intent is the problem here. They do it with a motive, in name, and for showing off. That is the problem. So now, as Lord Krishna is painting the picture of the demonic people, he says that these stubborn, self conceited people conduct sacrifices in name only. They are overpowered by their pomp and wealth. So they also do sacrifices which are very, very grand, so some of the sacrifices you would have read about in the scriptures also, and we see it currently happening. So they do grand ritualistic ceremonies to create an impression on the people that, okay, so when we went there, so many pandits were chanting, and this was the prasad, and so on and so forth. So it's all, pomp and show. Interestingly, if you look around you, you'll also find that even the non-pompous charity is clearly marked and labeled. So you'll find a bench in the park saying that this is devoted in the loving memory of so and so, or the list of donors to the Prime Minister's relief fund will come out. And so if the names are going to be mentioned only for people who give, let's say, above 10,000 or 50,000, the person who is of the devilish tendency will ensure that let's say I was planning to give 10,000, but then I realized, oh, it's only after giving 50,000 that my name will appear in that list, which will be published in the newspapers. I will ensure that I will give 50,000, right? Not because I want to give 50,000 to help the people who have been devastated by the natural calamity, but because I want my name to be published, right? So that is the motive. So such people are not bothered what the scriptures are saying, what is the moral value system, but they are performing sacrifices for advertising themselves, self-marketing, pompous display, and always wanting something in return. So the name being published in the paper, which will be then cut out and put on a board in the office to say that, okay, this is how I function. So just remind me, when we are doing the question answer session, I will wanted to talk about the incident of Tansen and Swami Haridas, uh, uh, to bring forth this point. But just now we will continue with the session. Just mind me, we'll do it in the question answer session. We'll take that up. Let's move on to verse number 18. अहङ्कारं बलं दर्पं कामं क्रोधं च संश्रिताः मामात्मपरदेहेषु प्रद्वेषन्तो अभयसूयकाः. So the verse says that given to egoism, power, haughtiness, lust, and wrath, these malicious persons detest me, me meaning God, in their own body and in others' bodies. So let's take this up word by word. Ahankaram is egoism, balam is power, darpam is haughtiness, Kamam is lust, Krodham is wrath, Cha and Sanshrita, Ashraya. So taking refuge in me, Atma Pardeheshu, in their own and others' bodies. Pradvishantah is detesting. Abhaya Suyakaha, malicious people. So, given to egoism, power, haughtiness, lust, and wrath, these malicious persons detest me in their own and in others' bodies. Right? So, let's chant it together. अहङ्कारं बलं दर्पं कामं क्रोधं च संश्रिताः मामात्मपरदेहेषु प्रद्वेषन्तो अभेसुयकाः. I think I missed the translation of pradvishanta, which means detesting. If I didn't, it's okay, it's a repetition. So the painting continues of the demonic people. They are egoistic, drowned in power, haughtiness, lust, and wrath. Now, see, what is happening is that they have the wherewithal to satisfy whatever they want to do. Because as we've been reading, that they employ all kinds of means, whether they are legal or illegal, moral or immoral, to attain what they want, right? So they have the wherewithal to indulge in their selfish and worldly desires. And they're so overpowered by desires and lust that their God is only the sensual pleasures. That is their God. That is what they worship. That is what they seek. And they become more and more egoistic with whatever they have, they are seeking, because that is what the nature of that desire is. And egoism is like quicksand. It rapidly takes the individual to lowest depths of behavior and borders actually on animalism. Now, drunk with passion, these people, they abdicate all culture and dignity. And this you will find in a lot of social gatherings where all kinds of people come. And as you interact, you will find that there's some people who are so cultured, they're so humble, but so that is one side of the spectrum. The other side is the powerful, arrogant, rich person who will arrive and, really doesn't care two hoots. If they recognize you, it's okay. If they don't recognize you, it's okay, because the whole world is fawning at their feet because of their wealth, power, and so on and so forth, right? So they become uh, uh, uncultured. They become crass, coarse, and they are malicious, cruel, belligerent, and insolent because of the false values they follow, right? And why are the false values there? Because the principle they are working on is that I am the one. They don't see oneness in God. They see that I am the one, and the entire creation is there to cater to my needs, to my requirements, to fulfill my, give me happiness, to do whatever I want. Right? So they start functioning in that mode, and they think that everyone should be catering to their needs. Consequently, they have no love, respect, compassion for others, and for life, because that is how God is manifesting himself or herself itself. Let's say that. They are unable to comprehend that the entire creation is a manifestation of God. So, with no respect for life, life is cheap for them, the environment is cheap for them, and they have no qualms in harming it. So, the person functions on I'm the one principle, the entire creation is there to serve me, and consequently does not respect others and behaves animalistically himself or herself. Hence, they are missing God entirely in both others and in themselves. And that is what The verse is saying that they disregard, disrespect, or hate that supreme God that is actually seated within all our hearts. So it's not only in my heart and your hearts, but it is also there in the heart of the insect, in the heart of the tree, in the heart of the uh, animal, that is the stray dog that is down the road. So it's there, but they miss it completely. With that, let's move on to verse number 19. तान्हं द्विषतक्रूरान् संसारेषु नराधमान् क्षिपाम्यजस्रमशुभानः आसुरेष्येव योनिषु. So the verse translates to, these cruel haters, worst among men, I hurl these evildoers forever in the worlds, in demonic wombs only. So let's take this up word by word. Tan is these. Aham, I. Vishatah, one who detests or hates. Kruran is cruel. Sansareshu, in worlds. Naradhaman is the worst amongst human or men. Kshipami, I hurl. Ajastram, forever. Ashubhan, which is not uh, auspicious. So, Ashubhan here in context of the men means evildoers. Asurishu, in demons. Asuro may. So, Asurishu becomes in demons. Ave only. Yonishu is in the wombs. Yoni is womb, so Yonishu becomes in wombs. So the verse translates to, these cruel haters, worst among men, I hurl these evildoers forever in the worlds, in demonic wombs only. So let's chant it together. Tanham dvishata krurana sansareshu naradhaman क्षिपामयजस्त्रमशुभानः असुरिषेव्य योनिषु. So see, the demonic have no respect for life, that we have just discussed. They are unable to comprehend that the entire creation is a manifestation of God. So they have no inkling of the supreme power. And in the previous chapter, chapter 15, the Purushottam Yoga, we had read how that God supports the entire macrocosm, the entire microcosm. So that Brahman, that reality, is the supreme controller and ensures that the entire creation functions seamlessly. The eternal laws always hold good. So, the gravity does not say that, okay, today I feel like functioning at, uh, you know, and today I don't feel like functioning. So we find that we are all flying or maybe moving into space. The sun says, I will not rise today. So we have long periods of darkness. No, these laws, the law of gravitation, the rotation of the earth, the revolution of the earth, they all continue. They all function. It's, we take so much for granted, we never think of it actually. So the entire environment around us is functioning as per the laws which are set by that supreme controller. When we are ourselves experiencing or listening or hearing or tasting, touching, it is our sense organs of perception that are functioning effectively. We have done nothing about it. It is that God that is enabling all these organs of perception to function. So at times when they're not functioning well, so you'll have a person who's got ears but is not able to hear, right? So what has happened? That power has gone out from that person. But the demonic reject, arrogant, they're so arrogant, they reject all this. They say, okay, I mean, I can get an hearing aid, I can do this. So they think that everything is within their power. So what is being put before? See, the verse says that I hurl these evildoers forever in the worlds into demonic wombs. So what actually Krishna does not mean, or God does not mean, that he is pushing people into the demonic wombs. It is that one of the eternal laws, which was a law of cause and effect, which is actually working. So the demonic people who are besotted by the world, they keep on increasing their desires and go into lower and lower depths of indulgences, and they're not pursuing God at all. So God is doing what? Is giving them the birth that they need. I mean, so the more crass your vasanas are, the more coarse a birth one will take. So, if one wants to eat just any kind of rubbish which is lying, you will take that birth to fulfill that desire. Right? It is what the person is seeking that they are getting. The law is true for everyone. So, this is actually the law of cause and effect. And you may recollect, we have been reading about this. We read about it in chapter 14. The verses were 14 and 15, where we talked about how the next birth, what kind of next birth of a person depends upon the actions of the up till that point of that person, of that soul, Jivatma. And also in as far back as chapter 6, Dhyan Yoga. And I will draw your attention, you can revise these verses 40, 41, 42, and 43 of the chapter Dhyan Yoga, where again we had talked about the how the knowledge, the spiritual knowledge that you have gained is not lost. That's the only thing that you carry from birth to birth. So, see, in chapter 14, we were talking about the birth being a result of the gunas, our composition. So, because chapter 14, if you recollect, was called the Gunatraya Vibhag Yoga. So, we were talking with respect to the gunas and how they result in the next birth. Chapter 6, we were talking about Dhyan Yoga. So, we were talking about how to put our faculties onto God. And there, because Arjun was distraught and he was wondering whether if he does not attain God in this birth, what happens to all the efforts that he has put in. So there the God had reassured him that this is the only thing that you take with you to the next birth. So these are the eternal laws, laws of cause and effect, laws of karma, and these are what determine our next birth, which is a direct result of our actions up till now, right? So the verse is saying that God hurls, but actually it is the law which has been set by God which is coming into effect, and therefore we ourselves with our own actions are hurling ourselves into that demonic womb for the next birth. So that is the right idea. Let's move on to the last verse for the day, which reads Asurim yonimapannaha Muha janmani janmani Mama prapyeva konteya Tato yantaya dhamam gatim. So the verse translates to attaining demonical wombs, the deluded birth after birth, not reaching me, thus pass into lower states, O Konteya. So let's take this up word by word. Asurim is demonical, yonim is wombs, apanna, what you reach or having reached. Having here it's the depth. So we're talking about having fallen into. Moor is one who's deluded. Janmani, Janmani. So that means in birth, after birth. So birth after birth. Mam me, aprapya. Prapya is to obtain. Aprapya means not obtain. So aprapya becomes not having obtained. If still Konte is name for Arjun that is being used here, Kunti Putra. Tat thence Yanti go adhamam is the lowest. Gatim is state. So attaining demonical wombs the deluded, birth after birth, not reaching me, thus pass into lower states, O Kaunteya. So let's chant it together. Asurim yonimapannaha मूढ़ा जन्मनि जन्मनि माम प्रापयेव कौन्तेय तथो यान्तय धमां gatim. So again, this is simple, that the demonic were deluded because they don't perceive that supreme power, continue with their sensual indulgences. And as they are indulging, now interestingly, the vasanas becoming, they become coarse and coarser. And that we have seen across the ages. So when you read Ramayana, uh, which happened many centuries before the Mahabharata, you see on that timeline the devolution of the human nature. So something like Draupadi's Chir Haran, you would not possibly have even imagined at the time of Ramayana, right? And of course, today's reflection, the Kali Yuga, is what you read in the newspaper and you wonder, how can someone do it? I mean, some of the news items that you read is just a pain. So, you don't want to read it. So disgusting, actually. So the vasanas become coarse and coarse. And we know, we have read that, and we have understood, hopefully, that unfulfilled desires or vasanas are the cause for next birth. And the texture of the vasanas, therefore, determines the kind of next birth we will have. So all those verses that we recollected with the previous verse of chapter 6 and chapter 14, they all talked of the same thing. So if my vasanas are pure, the texture of my fabric is fine, I will get a fine birth. If I am coarse, I will get that kind of, my vasanas are that of that nature, my next birth will be coarse. This rebirth is following that same law of karma and law of cause and effect. Now, the demonic, because of their own actions, which are gross, coarse, they are hurled into demonic lives to fulfill their demonic vasanas. So the demonic lives are because of the vasanas which are demonic. Consequently, they sink further and further and move in the wrong direction, out into the world and to greater and greater depths. And they continue to move away from that supreme reality. They have taken the wrong direction. It is like, I have to go from Noida to, let's say, Chandigarh, and I move on the Agra Expressway. That's not going to take me to Chandigarh. I have the goal is something and I'm moving in some other direction. Humankind's goal is to attain moksha, and we are moving towards uh, away from goal. Actually, we are moving in the opposite direction. So they have taken the wrong direction and they are moving away from the higher levels of consciousness. So to come back to that consciousness, the more you're going into the world, the more you'll have to come back. So Lord Krishna, through this vivid description of the two categories of humans, the mankind, the divine and the demonic or the diabolical, is advising the entire mankind, of course, through the medium of Arjun, that we can always do a course correction as well. So even the most fallen person can climb up and steadily progress in the spiritual evolution. We must understand it's not God punishing us. God is answering all our prayers. God is giving us what we are asking for. Since our prayer is for material wealth, sensual pleasure, and lust, that is what we are getting. So we have to pitch up the right goal. It's like, if someone comes, if you put candies if someone were to give you, let's say, 10,000 rupees and a box of candies and ask you to choose, if you're wise, you will choose the money. Show the same thing to a toddler or a child. He doesn't value money, is what notes, right? He would rather, he's happy with the box of chocolates. that is being given to him. So we are choosing the wrong thing, and that is what we are getting. So the God actions are ours. So just the way a drunkard will automatically, if it is evening, some of them do it also in the morning, will start going towards a bar. A drug addict will look out for the next rave party. A spiritual seeker is looking for the next satsang. So what we are seeking is what we are getting. And all of them, no one is pushing them. They are going to their destinations by themselves. No one is pushing them. They're going joyfully, and the entire effort is to reach the destination. So even if they're not being advertised, for example, a satsang or a rave party, the person who's interested in it will find it out where it's happening and will go there. So the vasanas are taking them to their destinations. Also, a couple of things that the verse is saying, that the human form is not permanently reserved for the soul, that you will always take birth as a human being. If we do not put good use to our of what we have, we can go down the spiral of evolution, and we can reach animal forms. And all paths are open to us at all times. So we can go up, or we can go down, or maybe remain at the same level. So all this is a result of our desires, gunas, and vasanas. So with that, we will stop today's session.